Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks, and today we are here talking about fights once again. We have myself, Jerry Walker, Anthony Miranda breaking things down, and today we're doing it's going to be a little bit more focused towards the recap of last week's pay-per-view, UFC 310. Then we're also going to do a little bit of preview for this week's upcoming Fight Night card. Big main event. Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley, and some other fights on that card. So, like I said, we'll have a little bit more to talk about as far as previewing goes, but we are going to touch on this upcoming card since there are some fights worth mentioning that are important. So we will start at UFC 310. We will start at the main event, and that is Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. Pantoja defends his belt with a second round submission victory. I want to start this off. We'll kind of give Pantoja his flowers in a second, but a lot of the conversation in this fight was Kai Asakura making his UFC debut. What did you guys make of Kai in his first UFC fight against Pantoja? What'd you like? What'd you dislike, if you have any? Anthony, we can throw it over to you first.
Well, I'd say just to start, I was happy with it overall. I thought he had a good debut. I liked what I saw enough. It was actually kind of fun getting that new fresh face on the scene, kind of knowing that there's some KO upside and everything. And I thought his striking looked good. Um, and I would say his defense looked good enough, but Pantoja does that to a lot of people. So it's tough to truly like say, oh, he has no defense, like he's purely like super flawed fighter. Which sure he has his strengths and weaknesses, but overall I thought it was a good first introduction.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there was a lot of stuff he looked good doing. I will say he didn't look worried about being there. He looked confident in his UFC debut. He looked confident all fight week coming up to it. Still think it was really funny. I think it was the unofficial, like the official weigh-in show or the ceremonial weigh-in show where they tried to have Joe Rogan interview him and they didn't have a translator. That kind of set the tone. He played along to that. I think he could be a very big crowd favorite in the future. I know it's only one fight and you are fighting the toughest guy in your division. So there's definitely stuff that you can poke holes in. Submission defense, for example, didn't look great there in the end, but otherwise, like he had some moments. I think the power is definitely there, and that was noticeable. It's just can he connect and can he actually keep up with these guys at a higher level than I guess what he's tried before.
Yeah, I won't add too much that you guys have not said. I thought it was a strong debut as well. Showed a lot of things that we were kind of expecting. The striking offense looked good in that round. Landed some shots. The flying knee in the first minute of that fight. Ends up getting submitted in the second round, and it's like I don't think he's the best defensive grappler in the world, but you're fighting Alexandre Pantoja, so the amount of mistakes that you can make is pretty limited. We've seen Royval be a guy who's at the top of this division. He fought Pantoja 3 times, has lost all of them, and in one of them he got submitted in the second round as well. So it's not like you Kai's the first guy to go out there and get subbed by Pantoja. So I'm not going to take too much away from him for that. And at a very minimum, I think he did a good job of the next time that he fights, I'll be interested. There's a lot of guys you can book him up with in this division that you go, well, that's a really fun fight. And I think at a very bar minimum, I think he accomplished that pretty well. So I'm excited for his future. Now, with that being said, on the flip side of things, we've got Pantoja gets that second round sub, now defends his title. I believe that was the third title defense, fourth title fight in total. But he has been one of the suddenly 3 title defenses, is one of the longer reigning champions in the UFC. There was a period of time where we had, the Usmans and the Volks and a lot of these guys running around with Izzy all at the same time with long title defenses. Now we're sitting at a point where 3 is one of the longest title defenses out there. So a big shape up in champions lately, and Pantoja has suddenly become one of the longer reigning ones. Anthony, what did you make of Pantoja's performance defending that belt?
I mean, I thought it was phenomenal. I think when we had the pod, you guys really changed like the lens. I was kind of looking through it. when because I know he's champion. Has these fights. He's been winning them. Some have been more entertaining than others in that way. But how active he's been and the defense he has is like truly to like appreciate him for what he's doing. Because like you can when you start comparing his resume to like he's doing the similar things to what Pereira's doing and how active he's being and defending it. So when you put it that way, I was a little bit more excited for this fight too for him as well, besides the fresh face in Asakura. But I thought he did great. He finally got that submission that he's been kind of going to decisions a lot, but finally got that decision. Finally got that submission that he's so capable of getting every fight. And I think he looked good. I thought his striking looked good. I was gonna say he loves getting touched up in his fights. It was pretty reserved. I mean, he got hit a couple times, but not as bad as what I thought it could have been, maybe in the first round. And then takes the back and sinks in that nice rear naked choke. So hats off to him. And then he had that Demetrius call out, which is bold. But I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves because that is only 3 for him. But still, I mean, he's doing everything he needs to.
Yeah, I mean, you look at just the length of times of these champions. He has now tied for the most title defenses in the current title defenses in the UFC with 3. Islam has 3. Alex Pereira has 3 as well. But he's also the 3rd or 4th longest reigning champion currently. Zhang Wei Li, John Jones, and Islam are all longer, but we see him kind of step up. And I think you brought up the submission. That's something that's huge for him. Like, that's why Alex Pereira has gone to this all new stardom of his life and all that. But he went on, beat the hell out of Izzy Adesanya the first time in the UFC, got knocked out the second time, moves up, and it's just knockout after knockout after knockout. It was before the title fights. Pantoja, like you said, Anthony, he's been decision guy. Now he goes in against this new guy and gets a submission. It's finally starting to see like people might be like, oh, he's just made her headline the last pay-per-view of the year. Got a finish, looked really good doing it against this dangerous guy who's meant to come out of nowhere and beat the hell out of you. It's a good look for him, and maybe we'll see what happens come the next year. It's a very interesting and murky picture in the men's flyweight division, but hey, we'll see.
Yeah, and I think an interesting thing about that from a viewership standpoint is I think a lot of people have only really seen his fights that happened when he was fighting for the title. I think one of the things that we've talked about recently is that they've done a much better job at promoting flyweight in general, whether it be giving them, the main event slot of a fight night or putting them on pay-per-views rather than burying them on the prelims. When you look at Pantoja, what he did prior to fighting for the title, he did a lot of good work, but it was, once in 2022 got the finish, once in 2021 got the finish, 2021 again got the finish, and then it's 2020 decision loss. So it's not like he was a super active guy prior to fighting for the title, and despite finishing some fights, it's not exactly getting premier card placement as a flyweight, especially 2 years ago. The level of promotion was lesser than it is now. So I think this was a good reminder to fans as to what he can do as far as submitting people goes, especially with that rear naked choke. I think when you talk about rear naked chokes in MMA, I think he's on the short list for having the best one. Him and Oliveira, outside of those guys, unless I'm really blanking, I'd have a hard time hearing another name that's active. I'll never argue with someone who says Charles Oliveira's got a better rear naked choke than another MMA fighter. So I'm not going to die on that hill. Aljamain Sterling may be a better back taker, but he struggles to get the choke, as we saw in his fight at 310 as well. So overall, I was really impressed with the performance. And one of the things that I'll mention as well, I've talked about durability a lot with Pantoja for a couple of these fights now, and getting the sub in the second round is a good way to not take as much damage as you would over the course of 5 rounds, even if it's a little bit of a higher pace, which that was a high pace first round. He ate some shots, wasn't anything, insane. He didn't go out there and eat fucking 50 shots. He just went out there, kind of managed a little bit, attempted some takedowns, landed some shots of his own. and then ultimately got the submission in the second round. So that's a good way of limiting the damage because he is now 34, turns 35 April 16th. So we will see if he can get booked before that April 16th date. And if he does not, we will see if he can survive past 55 because I'd have to go back and look, but I am not sure that anyone at 125 has won at the 35 age mark. We've seen that 35 age mark break a little bit as you go higher. 170, Bilal just won, but at 125, not as optimistic about that. But with that being said, may not be the case for a guy in like Pantoja who's going out there and looking as impressive as he is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the upcoming calendar. We already know we have UFC 311 all booked, UFC 312. That leaves 313 open before that, and I guess maybe 314 before he turns 35. So there is some chance. 313, I think, is in Vegas. I don't know if they've announced where 314 is yet, but there's always a chance.
Yeah. And nice thing about for Pantoja is he can slide in as a co-main, so it gives him a little bit more flexibility as far as booking goes. When you're a champion who's going to headline a card, you can't headline the same card as someone else. When you're a flyweight who can co-main, it gives you a little bit more flexibility as far as, if they put on a big fight at 313 and they'll have you as the co-main, makes it a little bit easier to get that return back to the octagon, which we talked about earlier in the show is something that he has shown the willingness to do. So we'll see how that shakes out. We can stay in a similar lane there. Very interesting title picture for Pantoja, considering he has beat Moreno multiple times. He has beat Royval multiple times. And really, if you were to pinpoint the two guys most deserving of the title, independent of fighting Pantoja, it would probably be those two guys, considering Royval is coming off wins against Tetsuro Taira, who was kind of in line to fight for the title, and Brandon Moreno, and you had Moreno take out Albazi. So those two guys have each taken out the guys who were hypothetically next up, and that has left no one really next up. So what do you guys make of this title picture? Is there a name that stands out to you, whether it be, an active flyweight, whether you have to go to a different promotion, a different weight class? I'm open to anything if you guys have ideas. Jerry, you can lead us off first on the future for what you would like to see from Pantoja.
I mean, it's a mess. I think that's the easiest way I can put this division, at least at the top. It's kind of chaos. Everyone's beating each other. No one's really established themselves as the number one guy. I don't care what he did in his last fight. He beat the hell out of Steve Erceg. But give me Kai Kara-France is the next deserving one, unless they want to make him in a Moreno fight again. But I don't really want to see that. The only one I'd want to see of his rematches again was let him run back the Amir Albazi fight. Let's get that out of the way. Amir Albazi didn't deserve to win that fight. I will stay by that. But I was like, we were talking. There's a reason that Kai Asakura came over from a new promotion. He's now ranked 14th, which we both, James, you and I were talking before the show started and thought that's a little low. But
that's really low.
He came in. He fought for the belt. So you fought the number 14 ranked guy. You fought the number 8 guy in Steve Erceg recently for the belt. Let's give some of these guys at the top. And it's, again, I don't know who it would be, but it's just the thing is everyone keeps beating each other. I'm going to say Kai Kara-France is the best option. Otherwise, screw it. Pantoja's never been finished. We have 2 extremely dangerous flyweights, one in Valentina Shevchenko, one in Ditcheva in the PFL, who we talked about earlier. Just want to throw that back out there because I was looking at her record, a lot of finishes. Let's run a tag team game of Pantoja and see if you can get through the 2 of them.
Henry Cejudo's so mad right now knowing he can't do this.
And then, I guess that's
2 years ago.
Henry Cejudo would be an intriguing one. I don't know if he got called out, but there's some that I know you guys will bring up that are entertaining calls as well.
No, I mean, I think we've all kind of said too. I like the Kai Kara pick would probably be my first, especially just kind of how fun that Pantoja one was going into it with Kai Asakura being like the new face, fresh face kind of that he hasn't fought. So and then also once again with the little KO upside, I thought that made for an entertaining fight week, entertaining build up and everything. So I think all that still holds true with Kai Car France. And then of course just the other name, which I get it because the first thing I said to my friends was I still and I will biased but also unbiased. I'm a huge Moreno fan, so I was like I still want to see that fight again. And it's not that I don't think Pantoja, necessarily deserved the win or anything. I just know Moreno broke his hand in like the second round of that fight, and I think it was a split decision win, I believe. So I think if Moreno maybe doesn't get that injury, that fight could be not that it wasn't competitive, but even more competitive, and obviously you'd have a better chance of winning too. So I still think I wouldn't mind that, even though I know they fought multiple times, to see that one more time. But I think definitely my first pick would be Kai Kara. Let's keep the things moving. Maybe if you don't have to get into the constant rematches that we've seen 2 or 3 times, maybe avoid it for another fight if you could just match up with Kai Kara France.
Yeah, so I have been very heavy on the Brandon Royval side of things a lot in the lead up. And then after this fight, I was kind of like, you know what? Now that push comes to shove, I just don't know that I can confidently, plant my flag for Royval anymore just because I do want to see a fresh matchup um, that we have not seen. Because we have had um, Pantoja go out there and fight a couple guys that he has fought previously. Um, Kai France, he did fight on the Ultimate Fighter, but to me, that's a little bit different than going out there fighting Moreno, who he's fought, and then going and who he's fought 3 times at least. He fought Royval 3 times as well, and Royval's 2 losses have came in 2022 in 2023, I believe. So like his fights against Royval have been very, very recently. So it makes it harder to really call for that rematch. So I think if we're just sticking in division and calling it how you want to see from guys in those divisions, I think Kai Car France makes sense. Considering he's got the win over Ursag, who looked good against Pantoja. I'm not one of the people who thought he beat Pantoja in that fight. I did square that fight for Pantoja, but I'll still say he looked pretty good. Kai goes out there, beats Ursag, and then the fight before, he lost, quote unquote, to Amir Albazi, but I've been right there as well, saying Amir Albazi had no business winning that fight. So I think Kai Car France deserves a title fight, and I also believe that it's a fresh matchup that we have not seen that is worth exploring. Now, with that being said, Pantoja has picked out his names. He called out Demetrius Johnson. That was number 1 on his list. DJ said no. Pantoja said, okay, that's fine. I'll train. You want to train instead? So that one's pretty much in the rearview mirror. Worth the Hail Mary, in my opinion, but not happening. And then he did bring up Kai Car France as well. He did say no Kai Car France in Australia. I'm not doing that, but I will fight Kai Car France, which I think's fair. I'm not a big fan of champion going to country of challenger and fighting there, so I'm not going to complain about that one bit. Then the other 2 names were Mohamed Mukayev and Davison Figueiredo. And Figgy has come out and said that he would make the drop back down to 125 if they gave him a title shot. So do either of those last 2 names that aren't really in the division now, do either of those names really stick out to you and scream, oh, yes, I'd like to see that? So that is Mokayev and Figueiredo.
I liked the Figgy fight. I didn't know that. I don't know Figgy cutting weight again, coming back down, how that would look. I think he kind of did everything. Him and Moreno, when they were doing their whole quadrilogy thing, I mean, they did kind of keep at least the flyweight division above water when they were doing it. So I think he put all he had into this division. But I mean, with the knockout power, the advantages he has, if he were to cut down again, he would be able to make it. oh, I mean, I'm definitely there for that fight. I think that'd be really cool. I mean, and he did so much for that division too that where, I mean, I do think it's kind of fair if they give him a straight title shot based off the picture. But and you said that was already after the Kai Kara Pantoja. That was under that name.
I don't even know if he had him ranked,
or he had him ranked, but
necessarily,
yeah.
but those were the three big ones that he was looking towards. I think Kai Kara France, it sounds like, is probably his most preferred option.
I guess the last thing I'd say, I would still prefer the Kai Kara first, but if they could definitely talk me into a Figgy matchup.
I'm with you as well. Like, unfortunately, James, I think it was you who said that he doesn't want to fight Kai in Australia. I don't think he'd get that opportunity this year. The Sydney card only 2 months away, 2 pay-per-views out. Also already has 2 title fights on it, so it's his lucky day. He chose his words perfectly. But no, that one would be my fight over choice, but I don't hate the Figueiredo fight. I think the flyweight division would be chaotic even more than it already is if Muhammad Mokaev gets cut, then somehow talks his way back and gets an immediate title shot after having not fought a single one of the top 5 guys. So I don't think that one will happen. I'm here with it, like Anthony was saying. Figueiredo did so much in this division. He was a champion for back and forth quite a while. Put on some great fights with Moreno. If you want to give him a title shot, might as well. They fought once before, went to a decision. I think Figgy came out on top there. So why not? Just do it in Brazil, please, because I want to see that with the crowd behind both fighters.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I won't add much more on top of what you guys said. I would prefer Kai Kara France first, and then we can go Figgy. And I think that makes more logistical sense because you can probably get that fight lined up. And then you can kind of prep Figgy, and he'll have a little bit more time for that turnaround of having to go back down and wait. That being said, I do think it'd be a pretty bad death sentence for Figgy. I think he'd probably lose that fight. Considering the weight cut. But if Pantoja wants it and Figgy wants it, and Figgy thinks he can make the weight, I'll give Figgy the benefit of the doubt, considering he's the maniac who'd been making the weight the whole time. And I also give him the benefit of the doubt based on what you said, Anthony. Like, what he did for that division is pretty impactful in hindsight. So if he wants one more shot at it, I don't hate that. And if I were Pantoja and I was worried about the 35 rule of things, the perfect way to play this is squeezing that title fight with Kai Kara France at age 34 at UFC 313. And then your next fight is Figgy, who's technically older than him. So then the rule of 35 would not apply. It would actually be against Figgy because he's the older of the two. Because it only applies to when the 35-year-old, the fighter who's 35 or older is the older fighter in the matchup. So if you're trying to extend this title run, that may be the way to do it to ensure age of 35 is on his side. After the Figgy fight, then you got to start trying to take out the younger guys.
Then it's Demetrius Johnson and Henry Cejudo.
yeah.
Line them up.
It's smelling a TJ Dillashaw return at 125.
All of a sudden, he's got an eight title defenses off 6 guys who have all well over the age of 35. So, but yeah, I think that also would be fun, and I think that would hopefully provide time for either another title contender to emerge that could come off the back of that second title fight, or B, put enough space between those Royval and Moreno fights to where you're now a little bit more hungry to see those fights again, considering the fact that, the Royval fight was only a calendar year ago. That was last December. You add another 6 months, fans may be a little bit more hungry to see that than they would have been if you would have done that right away. So I do think those two things will be helpful in that scenario as well.
I mean, have just a question. Have Royval and Kai Kara France fought before? Yes.
No, I do not believe so.
They did it in 2020, I just found. Kai Kara France got submitted by Royval.
Oh, yeah, that's the fight where he jumped Gilly. Was that a guillotine?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
I do remember that.
I was going to say, I wouldn't mind if they ran that one back and then the winner fights, but I don't know, just while we're talking about the flyweight division, I'm going to go ahead a little bit till next week, but the Manel Kopp, Bruno Silva intrigues me in terms of the matches making you can make after that. And that's where like Figueiredo fits in perfectly. If Pantoja wants to go fight Figueiredo instead, give me, say, Manel Kopp. If Manel Kopp wins, give me that Kai Kara France Manel Kopp instead that we've been waiting for over around a year now. So because it just seems to be good. And why not? If he wants to fight one of the older guys one more time and then get into some new people or like doesn't think they deserve a title shot yet, that's fine by me.
Kopp and Kai Kara France is a pretty big layup for me. You know, you ever book that fight, I'm gonna go. All right, gotcha. I'm down. You know, I don't care if it has to put other things on the back burner. I'll take it.
Yeah.
All right. Before we move off of this main event, Kai Asakura, next fight for him. Anthony, I believe it's your turn to lead us off. Do you have any preferences for Kai Asakura's next fight?
Yeah, my preference is just literally anyone. Like you can put him just get him active, like keep him active. There's so many fights to make. I don't know. I guess if I had a preference, that 14, I missed that. Like when you guys were talking about it, that 14 seems really low to me. So I would prefer him not have to do the whole like make his way up. Like I wouldn't mind just keeping him in the top 5, honestly. But I think any fight, you can make any fight there, and it will be entertaining, or I mean, it will be intriguing to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, we were all kind of, at least I was surprised a bit that that's where he kind of came to at that point, was at 14. I thought it'd be somewhere around like 9, 10 area, considering that's where Steve Erceg is. And sure, Erceg went the distance, but other guy.
Tim Elliott's better than him, though? Is that what
that's the name that I said when we were talking before the show. I was like, really?
Yeah, no. I don't think that. So, I mean, hey, give him the Tim Elliott fight. Have him get his
there you go.
Otherwise, the two that I like, or I guess 3, I just kind of like Kai Kara France matched up against everyone, but the entertainment of a battle of the Kais. So why not do that? That'd be entertaining. I think that's the opposite direction of which way Kai Kara France should be fighting, but you never know. Otherwise, as I said, I think to James before we started the show, a Tatsuya Taira fight, if they were to do a fight night in Japan, that would be probably on the top of my list of fights for them to make as far as what to do with Kai Asakura following that. So I don't hate the Taira fight. If we all, I can't speak on you, Anthony, but I know James and I have this real feeling towards Amir Albazi. If you want to get this guy in the top 5, have him fight Albazi. But somewhere in the top 10, I think, between realistically 10 and 5 is where I'm fine with any of those.
Yeah, so I'm personally a little bit higher. I'd just be, you've got Kai Kara France, you've got Brandon Moreno, you've got Brandon Royval. One of those 3 guys can fight for the title. If it's Kai Kara France, that's fine. Give Kai Asakura to either of the other 2. You got a fun fight and puts him a little bit closer towards getting that title. So that'd probably be the way I'd approach it, because otherwise, if you don't I don't know who you would give Royval or Moreno otherwise. If they're not fighting for a title, like who the hell they can't fight each other. So it's like, how do you book those 2 guys? So I think that may be the way that I'd approach it.
Yeah. That's not a bad shot, because it is a mess. With those 2 won't have a fight for a while if nothing happens.
And they're too entertaining to have them sit on the sidelines. Yeah. All right, so let's slide down to the co-main event. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Garry. 2 undefeated fighters. Shavkat Rakhmonov gets the decision win. It did end his streak of finishing every single opponent he had ever fought. So it's kind of a bummer for him, but he does get the win. Ensures he will fight for the title next. I think this fight was a little bit more tepid than most expected. But, there's reasons for that. You could make the case. Jerry, you can lead us off on this one. What did you make of the co-main event?
I mean, I will start out by saying I'm impressed that he didn't end up tapping out to Ian Garry's submission attempt in that 5th round. It definitely didn't seem under the chin, but it looked pretty tight, and he was still kind of looking up at the camera, Shavkat, and smiling. So there's that, but it did look like it was very close. So fair play to him there. as far as this fight goes, it's like I was expecting two guys come into this 18-0, 15-0, one or talking the talk. Obviously, Shavkat's had a finish in every single one of his 18 professional fights before this weekend. I thought these guys were going to come out there and try and knock their heads off. I thought someone was going to end up dead in the not quite dead in the octagon, but I thought someone was going to get slept in the octagon on Saturday, one way or another. And it didn't seem that way. I think I'll let you say it, James. But there's a phrase that, or a way that someone put it, that I completely agree with. After I didn't really think about it until you mentioned it earlier, but this fight seemed like it missed something. It seemed like if it wasn't all this talk about the O's or the winner of this probably gets the next title shot, I think we would have had a much, much, much better and more entertaining fight. Not that this wasn't entertaining by any means, but I think lesser stakes would have seen these guys go at it a lot harder.
Yeah, and I mean, and it was late placement and stuff too. So, and then I didn't know if that whole I heard Shavkat maybe had a knee injury, but that happens after every fight. Apparently, fighters are injured and stuff. So, but I would same thing. I actually really still enjoyed this fight, and I thought it was technical, and I still had fun. But definitely, the whole time I was like, I just felt like it was a teaser as to what a perfect fight from them could be, with maybe a little more striking, a little less cage control the whole time and stuff. But I think it had its moments throughout. And I know some people were a bit disappointed, but I just thought, yeah, technically, I still really enjoyed the fight, and I thought Ian Garry looked really good. Um, he impressed me as to what he's been doing against other people, seeing it against someone at Shavkat's level and stuff like that, and made Shavkat look a little bit human compared to how Shavkat's been looking in his recent fights. So overall, I thought that I guess the best way to say it is I thought it was a really good fight still. It maybe didn't deliver the most entertaining fight ever, but it definitely, after seeing that, it makes me want to watch 5 more rounds. And I would assume those next 5 more rounds would be more entertaining. It's kind of where I got left with the fight.
Yeah. As far as the tepidness goes, I think it's really interesting because you have Ian Garry, who is kind of gonna play that style a little bit. And then when it comes to, and when I say play that style, I mean, he's gonna kick the legs, try and throw the straight shots. That's a little bit harder to do against someone of Shavkat's size. So it's a little bit harder to find that heavy success doing that. And then that makes it harder to take the risks of, throwing that head kick that for example, that he knocked out D-Rod with in the first round, or even going in the pocket and exchanging. And then it's also like, are you going to take those risks to go in the pocket to exchange when we've seen Shavkat get hit upside the head with hammers and not get knocked out? So you really just are and even then in the first round, there was an exchange at the end of the first round, and Shavkat was the one who landed the bigger shot. So I think it's a hard fight for Ian Garry to press forward, especially when he's at the physicality disadvantage. And we kind of talked about that in the preview as well, and I think that held true during the fight. And then you had Shavkat, who didn't really press as much as you would expect from Shavkat. But when you look at that, he's getting just like there's certain points in that fight where he's not really pressing. He's got Garry backed up, but he's just getting oblique leg kick. Here's 4 more leg kicks. He's just constantly getting attacked at the legs. And I think he didn't really want to just walk into these, any moment he could have walked into an oblique kick. There's a couple times Ian Garry landed some really good oblique kicks, so it made it a lot harder for Shavkat to really just foot on the gas forward, get in his face and get active. And then from the clinch, Shavkat's takedowns weren't really that great, which they've never been that great. Jerry brought up the number on the show last week. His takedowns were landing at 29%. Great grappler from top position, which we saw. When he landed the takedown in round 4, he got a lot of ground and pound and did some good damage. That was his best moments of those fights was round 4 once he did land the takedowns, not the moments where he was chasing the takedown. So I just think it was, and also 5-round fights. Like these guys not fighting in 5-round fights in the UFC, and now they're in a 5-round fight against another guy who's undefeated looking to fight for the title. So in that regard, like if I'm Shavkat right now, he won and he gets to fight for the title. I'd be happy with the fact that I had 5 rounds of experience and got to experience that against preparing for someone in Bilal who pretty hard to finish. Even if I don't love the Bilal, I don't think he's easy to finish, and I don't think he's going to fade in the late rounds. So I think whatever experience he got here by fighting in the late rounds is useful for that fight. But point being, this fight, you know, he's probably had to figure out how to pace himself when you're, constant forward pressure your whole career until someone else just can't take it anymore, and he finishes them, which was every single fighter. Now when he can't get the finish, it's like, how do I pace myself to fight for 25 minutes and not sprint for 3 minutes or 7 minutes or 11 minutes or however long that is. So I think was just a lot of things working together here. And in hindsight, none of them really led to a finish or, a very high level fight. Like you did say, Anthony, I think if we saw 5 more rounds of this, I do think it was getting to the point where, it would have been a little bit of a higher pace. Shavkat started to grapple on the lower body. Ian Garry started to counter. So it started to heat up a little bit in rounds 4 and 5, and it was getting to the point where it was going to be a little bit more exciting. Weird fight where 4 and 5 are the most exciting rounds of the fight, but it's just the way it played out.
And
Yeah.
I was just saying, I just think too, with like if both of them get full camps too, and then the other reason I did like this fight too was there was clinch, there was some striking. I probably would have liked a little bit more striking, but yeah, kicks, obviously, punt, like strikes to the head and everything, and then there was submission attempts, pretty close to getting locked in. There was good ground and pound. So it just felt like every part of the UFC of MMA was being used and by each fighter. So overall, like the whole fight in total, I thought there was enough there for me to where I was happy with.
Yeah, I mean, the inexperience did show in both of them a little bit in those 4th and 5th rounds, because I think Ian Garry's been to 1/5 round when he was in Cage Warriors, and I don't think Shavkat's ever been past the 3rd. Don't even know if those fights he's been in have been allowed for 5 rounds. Either way, we've never seen him go to a decision. So I wonder, in that mixed with what you're saying, Anthony, of a full fight camp, if Ian Garry didn't have to change up his opponent from a guy who's predominantly a striker in Joaquin Buckley to a guy who's honestly might be the best overall mixed martial artist in terms of he can do stuff on the ground, he can do stuff on the feet. And Shavkat is a huge way to change up on such a short notice. But fun fight. I'm sure we'll see it again at some point.
Yeah. And as far as the short notice goes, both flipped from complete opposite opponents.
Yeah, I guess the same.
So massive style changes. So that hurts both of them as far as pursuing a finish goes. And there's also a period of time in there where it's, well, is the interim belt going to be on the line? Do we do Ian Garry? If we do Ian Garry, who does Buckley fight? If we can we get Usman in there to fight Shavkat? So it's not even like it was Bilal pulls out and snap your fingers, Ian Garry comes in. There was a whole, middle road in there where you've got Shavkat and Ian Garry both training, going, when am I fighting? Shavkat's going, am I fighting Usman or Ian Garry? I mean, and Protez was even in the conversation as well before they found out he was injured. Then you've got Ian Garry trying to figure out, is he getting the Shavkat fight or is he training for Buckley? So it's a lot of things in there that, and for Ian Garry, that's the weight cut as well that changes a week forward. So just a lot of things that don't really produce the best level you'll see from both of these guys throughout their career.
Yeah, do you think we would have seen a finish had the interim title been up on the line?
No, I think it would have been relatively similar, personally.
I think so too, but at the same time, maybe with full camps and everything, say Shavkat wins the belt and they go to rebook this. At that point in the next fight, I don't think that hurts the case for there being a finish. I think there's maybe a little bit more desperation and or for a more positive turn, maybe there's more hunger to like get that win in that way instead of trying to leave it up to the judges. So.
Because personally, I think if this had the interim title written on it, we would have seen a very different style fight. I think maybe the early rounds would have been similar, but I think they would have gone down swinging, trying to get the others out of there. When it was, what was it, 2-2? Would you guys say going into the 4th or 5th, or did you think Shavkat was up 3-1?
No, I think it was 3-1.
Okay, so yeah,
I think I did have it 3-1 as well. Yeah. And then ended up being a pretty close split to me, though. or not split, but yeah, it had a 3-2. But
Fair enough.
Because Ian Garry won the 5th and almost choked him. Because that was the round he almost got to choke, so he won that round. So it was the judges had it 3-1 as well going into 5.
Okay.
So,
I can't remember. I wasn't scoring it when I was watching.
yeah.
It's also Wednesday after fight week, so rounds and moments and rounds can get a little fuzzy.
Which I'm hoping you guys will help me with this next fight too, because I know what I thought happened, but I don't remember the exact rounds and stuff. But I know what I thought should have happened.
Yeah, exactly. Before we swing it over to that, I do want to get your guys' thoughts real quick on Ian Garry's next fight. Shavkat got Bilal, signed, sealed, delivered. He comes in the octagon. Ian Garry, do either of you guys have a thought or opinion? Because I honestly don't have like this is who I want to see Ian Garry fight. It has to be this guy. So I do just want to get your guys' thoughts on if you have any hard opinions, for what should be next for Ian Garry. Was supposed to fight Buckley. Now you've got Buckley Covington. So that kind of takes both those guys he was trying to fight off the board. So it makes it a little bit tough. Anthony, we can swing it over to you. Do you have anything that you're itching to see for Ian Garry?
Not necessarily. I see Jack Della, but I don't know if you want to ruin one of those. I mean, I guess it's not really ruining it. If probably whoever wins that fight, I would say it's safe to assume they would be getting the next title shot. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of that has to happen. But I don't know. You got Sean Brady. There's that Leon fight still. Nothing to do with Leon. I don't know if anything's been announced with him yet, but Gary's beat enough ranked people in this division, and looked good enough in that fight to where I'm fine. I'm there for one of his fights. I think he's, I'll be ready for it. I would just prefer to maybe not, even though he took that loss, still just be a one fight away from the title, one big win away. I don't think you should make him start having a stack like 2 wins again or anything.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't like the shout of like a Sean Brady. I would rather not see Jack Della Maddalena at this point in time. I think I'd rather see Jack fight either Leon Edwards or Kamaru Usman in that way, so he kind of works himself up, and then you let them stack up. Because you look at the flyweight division that we just talked about, there is no one to fight for the title. Here, there are plenty of guys who are a win away from fighting for the belt and all that, and you can line them up and knock them down perfectly. So, in my mind, but other one, if Colby Covington comes out and actually wins next Saturday, give me Ian Garry and Colby Covington. That's the only fight that I'm like, I don't care what the rankings are, what the result would be. I just think that would be a fun fight to have, mostly because of the presser and everything leading up to it. That's the only one where I'm like, give me that fight if it's available.
Yeah. As far as I go on this, I am kind of the opinion that JDM and Usman are going to fight at UFC 312. I've just kind of, that's always been one that's been a rumor. And I think that's probably why Usman declined to fight Shavkat in December, knowing that he can just wait and fight JDM. And what difference does it make to you whether you're fighting Shavkat or JDM and one of them doesn't have to be on short notice? So I've just kind of always thought that was kind of what we were going to get from Usman next. So I kind of think both those guys are off the board. And then where I think the conversation then turns is someone needs to fight Leon Edwards, because I think Leon Edwards is going to fight in London. And then I think the outcome of this next fight is actually going to be important on Saturday. We've got Buckley and we've got Colby. If Colby wins, I agree that we should just do Ian and Colby, signed, sealed, delivered. But if Buckley wins, I don't see, I think Buckley, and that would put Buckley and Ian Garry in a very similar position. And you have to kind of pick one of the two to go up all the way and fight Leon. And meanwhile, the other one will be stuck with the fight against Sean Brady. And I don't say stuck as, it sucks to fight Sean Brady, but one of them's a headline, a fight night against a former champ. It's just simply a bigger opportunity. So that's kind of my thought process there. So I think these guys are a couple pegs down I think Ian Garry's a couple pegs down on some dominoes ahead of him are going to fall. And then you have to figure out who wins a fight. And then that changes things as well. So a lot of ifs for that Ian Garry for me.
No, you go.
All right. I'll say, and if that is the situation where it is Joaquin, Buckley, Ian Garry, Sean Brady, and Leon Edwards, feed me Leon Edwards and Ian Garry in England. You damn well know a bunch of Irish folk will fly over, drive over, swim over from their small neighboring country for that. So I think it'd make for a much, much more entertaining atmosphere, entertaining fight than the Joaquin Buckley, just because of that pure hatred between the English and the Irish at times.
I
Especially
can definitely see that one being some fun.
Yeah, I was just gonna say before you go, Anthony. Ian Garry said he will not do that. He said he will fight Leon Edwards, but he will not fight in Europe unless it's not in Ireland. So he made that stance. So
hard to call the shots when you're seventh.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. I guess this technically was Gary's shot to skip the line. So maybe with his last wins being Michael Venom Page and Jeff Neal, maybe it is unfair for me to say, oh, he deserves, one win and then the title fight. I guess technically this Shavkat was his chance to do that. So overall, but I mean, just keep. It's tough because I don't want to be necessarily stuck with Leon and Usman like both winning their fights and they're 1-2 again. So
yeah.
I do. That's why I was saying I didn't want the Jack Della matchup because I'm trying to keep someone newer still, title ready. But
yeah,
I think there's still some good fights though to make, so I'm not too worried.
Yeah,
that makes sense. All right. Next fight on the card and last fight we'll break down in detail before we start hitting some final thoughts. Alexander Volkov versus Ciryl Gane. I won't bury the lead here. I scored this fight Gane. Thought it was pretty clearly Gane. I thought Gane, or excuse me, my God.
I was like,
sorry.
no way. I didn't know if he was like joking, and then he said it again, and I was like, holy God, did he really do this?
I'm sorry. I scored the fight for Volkov. My apologies. I scored the fight for Volkov. I thought it was a pretty clear Volkov round 2 and round 3. Biased disclosure, I did have Volkov plus 300. So maybe that is weighing down on my thought process.
No,
but I also think I've gotten pretty good at the point of, trying to be honest here. I've been through enough of these robberies with bets on the line to where I don't think I think I've gotten to the point where I can see past it a little bit. And I also think the only reason Ciryl Gane won the first round, if you even think he won the first round, and I thought he won the first round after, and then I was kind of thinking about it, and he landed a couple shots in the first round, but it was, they both spent some time on top. Volkov was kicking the hell out of his body. He might have won the round 1 right off body kicks. But then you have the fence grab as well that's mixed in there. And that fence grab is the sole reason that Volkov, when he escaped a position, went from being on bottom to being back standing rather than being from bottom and landing the reversal and being on top. And if he lands that reversal, he definitely wins that round. So not only did he get screwed on the scorecards by not winning 2 and 3, he got screwed by the ref, and that made it harder for him to win round 1. So, I mean, I guess I don't know if anyone has any differing opinions, but I was pretty solid on Volkov winning this fight, and this is a pretty bad one in my eyes. I wouldn't toss it up there with the worst of all time, but it's up there with Kai France and Amir Albazi for decisions that I'm not a fan of.
Yeah,
Jerry, I'll let you take it over on this one because I think you've got an opinion on that as well.
Yeah, and against a guy in Ciryl Gane who all he wants to do is fight John Jones for the belt. All he thinks he should is fight John Jones for the belt. He's not a good fighter. He lost the fight. Oh yeah. Wait, let me interrupt. He's not a good grappler. He's solid on the feet. I'll give him props there. But if one of us managed to land a takedown, I don't think he would get back up. And I know I'm damn well not a trained wrestler by any means. If you spread him out long enough and you wait, he will fold. But as far as the decision goes, I completely had it as Volkov 2-1, second and third. First one, I was like, maybe, but I didn't really think much of the fence grab at that time. Watching it back, I'm sure I'll be like, okay, maybe. But if this fight showed me anything, there's maybe run it back. I mean, you can never trust UFC judging, and that's one, I guess, you don't let it go to the judges. You try and finish it because you never know what can happen.
And I thought, like you said, it ended up biting him. Volkov wasn't active enough in the third when he had the chance to be on top just to help, rain down punches sometimes, which it's such a bad way of thinking too, I guess, when you're literally fighting another person. But we always talk about make it look better to the judges by just throwing punches. But that definitely would have helped him here.
Mhm.
I remember, I think before that third round started, I must have had I must have assumed it was 1-1-2, but I just remember thinking before that third round started, I was like, I just think, depending on either how this round feels or how this round plays out necessarily, that third round, I was like, God, it feels like Volkov has just won this fight though. If you, I know it's rounds, so it's 5 minutes, but that 10-minute chunk, it feels like Volkov is winning. Um, and then the third round plays out how it does. And I thought, he had that round too. He just wasn't active enough when he had the chances. And then you don't see it too often. Dana will speak about fights and judging a lot, but there's few and far between when he like adamantly is like, no, that's a robbery. Like you got screwed, and he did it again here. I want to say one of the last times he did it was for that Kaikara Albazi fight. I know he did it with a Jose Aldo, was it Marlon Moraes fight too, maybe, or something way back there. But
Yep.
sometimes he does truly come out and just he's like, yeah, that one did not agree with that at all. And it's not even him saying that, like, I didn't agree. He'll be like, everyone disagreed with that. So I think I will say too, the last thing, we were correct. It was a little more entertaining than the first one though, for sure. So I thought the fight as a whole was pretty good. And I thought watching that fight, I was like, oh God, see, it's not that hard to, when you do put two of the more technical heavyweights together, it can be better than watching, because even though give or take there's no KO, I was sitting there watching that like, is this not more fun than watching two people that are supposed KO artists just swing at each other? Overhand, sloppy overhand. So overall, I did think it was still a better fight, a fun fight.
I do want to just bounce off before you go, James. Like your Dana White thing is like, when do we see Dana White go up to a fighter right after he gets out of the octagon and pretty much say, that was effing wrong. The judges got that wrong. You got screwed. I'm going to fix that.
Yeah.
You see him do it
especially if they're not American too.
Yeah, you see him in the presser after, but not like going up to a fighter unless it's one of the guys of the business and defending him like that. So that talks waves to how I guess he felt about it.
Mm-hmm. And I also think it was I don't really understand the swing around here was actually round 2. Yeah, I don't understand how judges were giving that out to Gane, considering. I mean, I thought Ciryl landed good shots in that round as well, and that was a fairly high-paced round for heavyweight, and both landed some shots. But I thought Ciryl, when you're talking about landing really good shots that hurt the other person, I think Ciryl landed 1, and I think Volkov landed 2. And that's on top of Volkov winning the minutes outside of those big moments. So I think in the swing round, I think Volkov had more big moments, had the biggest moment with the spinning back fist, and I think he won the minutes outside of the big moment. So to me, that's like that's a not negotiable round when that's how you phrase a round. More big moments, the biggest moment, and everything else aside the big moments. It's like so he won the round. That to me is crazy that he didn't. That was the swing round, and he ended up losing because of that round. I will quickly also say that much more grappling here. We were very adamant on the preview that rematches aren't the same, and hell, grappling seems like a plausible path here, considering what we've seen from these guys since. And Gane looked slightly better than I expected on the ground. He got up in the first round, and I was like, oh my god. So I will give him a slight bit of credit. I still don't think he looked good. He still went for a heel hook.
I was gonna say he tried it again.
It lost him a title fight, and he went back.
DC called him out super bad too.
And in the 5th round,
I missed that. Who was his call out?
DC?
No, DC called him out on the mic.
Oh, okay. DC.
Yeah. DC was like, he tried it again. This is what lost him the fight against Nagano. And I was like, dang, okay.
Okay, I missed that then.
Yeah. And then in the 3rd round, he tries to go Kimura for some reason. He loves these like little guy Kimuras, and it's like, no, dude, you're a big guy. The big guy submissions are you take his back and you go arm triangle from top or rear naked choke, because they're too big to defend.
Use your weight.
Yeah, yeah. Use your large frame, please, instead of rolling around for joints. But yeah, when he doesn't get to Kimura in round 3, he's literally like, "Oh, I lost this fight." You can see the moment he doesn't get to Kimura, and he's like, "I'm gonna lay here now." And then the fight ends, and he just keeps laying there, and he's like, "I lost the fight." It's like he didn't think he won the fight either.
That's another thing. When the guy fighting looks defeated,
Yeah,
doesn't that speak boundaries to it?
Yeah, I thought that's what I'm saying. I thought Volkov he was defeated and Volkov didn't like take advantage of it. There's just no like finishing gene apparently in that 6'7" body of his. But the other thing I saw people were joking about was it looked like Gane like, and I didn't read it like this. I thought he just didn't want to talk. But they were saying Gane was walking out of the octagon thinking he lost and then came back in because they told him he won. I just thought, I know he said he broke his toe too. I thought he just was like leaving, but I don't know if you guys saw anything about that.
I didn't see anything about that, but he broke his toe, and once again, your toe hurt. This is famous Chael Sonnen line on Anderson Silva, but your toe hurts because it's attached to you, dummy. That's why his toe hurts. Like, honestly,
Yeah.
like today I rewatched Cop versus Mokaev for this week's preview. He breaks his toe, and he snaps. He feels the toe broken, and he just goes, "Well, I got to keep throwing." It's like Brates went out there and knocked out Neil Magny with a broken foot. Like Shavkat went out there with an MCL. Brandon Moreno fought Pantoja with a broken hand in round 5, and this guy's got to throw a hissy fit after winning a robbery because he broke his toe. And it's okay, dude. And it magically breaks on the first kick of the fight, right?
That's never like I broke it. It's always the first kick.
Yep. It was the whole entire fight. My toe was broken. It's like, yeah, sure, you magically broke it on the first kick. I'm sure you did, man.
He's just trying to take away some of the spotlight from the guy who was meant to headline this fight, Bilal Muhammad, and his toe.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
he always wants to be a champion, but doesn't want to fight a champion.
Yeah. I honestly would also off the back of that, I wouldn't hate the rematch either. Like, what the hell are we like? I know for a fact Tom and John aren't going to fight anytime soon. If they fight, like, screw it, run it back. You might as well. Like, the division is heavyweight to fight. You can book anybody against anybody. It really doesn't matter that much. Just do it again. Do it for 5 rounds and decrease the chance for a robbery.
Honestly. Yeah, I was good. Increase the chance of rounds 4 and 5 like it got awful, but we'll see.
That's true. Yeah,
maybe make it a 5-round main event.
Yeah.
All
right, let's hit on some final things for this.
Just on the comment of like who they should fight next, because I don't know Don and Tom will ever fight. Just say fuck it. Give Tom Aspinall Ciryl gone at last. Just send him off to England. Watch him get exposed, and let's just get that out of the way. Then make the rematch. They could do that fight in 3 days' time. I don't think it'd matter. It could be 3 months, 3 years from now. What?
You had me at Tom, so if whoever he has to fight, I'm there for it.
Yeah, you told me Tom Aspinall was fighting, so I won't complain.
Yeah.
All right. Final thoughts on this card. There's a lot on the table because we only talked about 3 fights on the card. So throw out as many as you want. I do not remember whose turn it is to lead us off. So if either of you have one that's really sticking out to you, feel free to volunteer yourselves.
It's all you, Anthony, if you want to go.
Yeah, let me pick a couple. I thought I'll start with some of the early ones. Chase Hooper, real nice submission. I think he did what he was supposed to do against Clay Guida. He was pretty old, but I mean, he was super young. We've watched him kind of grow each time he's in the octagon. I thought he looked really good. Maybe time for a step up in opponent. Max Griffin, I thought he was going to do a little bit better. But maybe that was me kind of being completely against Michael Chiesa. I actually thought he looked good in that fight. Looked pretty good. So overall, I mean, old guy, but Chiesa, that's another pretty decent name for where he's at in his career right now. I thought he looked good. And then I think the last one we'll see, I was that Randy Brown, Brian Battle fight. That was going to be a little more electric, but overall, I was still happy with it. good little fight. I wanted to see. I do think Battle maybe won the fight. I didn't love that decision. I almost had Brown a little bit too. I thought it was close, but I was going to see what you guys thought on that fight overall. I try to remember the breakdown in my head, but I remember I didn't think it was like a robber or anything, but I think I was actually leaning Brown when that fight was said and done.
Yeah, I'll hop in on that because I have some thoughts on that. I think Battle won the fight, but I think this was a scenario where round 1 is the best round for any round of the fighters. So I think Randy Brown won round 1 clean.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think Battle won 2 and 3, but he won them like not like, oh my God, he clearly won that round. So to me, those are always tough to score because I think if you look at the totality of 3 rounds and go who deserves to win, it's probably Brown. But if you look at it 3 5-minute rounds, who won 2 of the 3 rounds, I think it's probably Battle. So I think that's one of those ones that's probably a flaw in the scoring system. Which sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen. But I think that's one of those ones that you can't really do much about. As far as the fight goes, I think it was a little bit of not a little bit. It wasn't that great of a fight. A lot more clinching than I was expecting. One thing I do think is funny is everyone thought it was funny when Brian Battle was making fun of the French fans and playing the heel card. But then when the gun got turned around and he was playing the heel card on them, all of a sudden it's not so funny anymore. Now we hate Brian Battle. So
I was working, so I didn't hear.
That's funny.
I didn't hear any of the post-fight interviews. What was he calling out? Was he going off on California or?
And he was getting booed, and he was like, "What the hell?"
I think
it wasn't as bad
because he missed weight. He missed weight, and that fight was supposed to be like the most entertaining one, arguably, on the card, and it didn't. So I mean, people just like to boo too a little bit, but it was like a fit, like half maybe the fans didn't need to be booing, but half of him. He knew what he did. He missed weight and stuff, and it didn't. He could have been maybe a little bit more active. There was a lot of holding up against the cage in that fight and stuff. So,
and then the second you boo Battle, he's also gonna go, "Fuck you!" Like he's gonna play into it and make them boo more. So it's not like he was never like upset that he was getting booed. He plays into it as well. So then the crowd just boos more, like he's not playing into it. So it created that dynamic on top. I don't think it's anything too serious. Battle goes out there and has a good time in his post fights.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I guess I'll hop in. First of all, I want to say if the end is here, it's been a good time. Our favorite fighter, Anthony Smith. You all saw Dana White's comments of it. It was like Anthony Smith, I think Clay Guida, and Chris Weidman all need to retire.
Yes, they do.
I kind of thought Anthony Smith was retiring after that fight in the octagon. Someone said he did or was going to. I don't know. But then you look at the other side. Vicente Luque getting a win over Themba Gorimbo. Fair play to him. Dominic Reyes getting the knockout win. Maybe he's back. He's passed the Anthony Smith test at last. Now it's his time to go on a title run.
Yeah.
The other one I want to give a shout to is Kennedy Njoku. Because 2-0, 2 first round finishes at heavyweight. It's heavyweight. There's nothing crazy. Why not have him fight Ciryl Gane? As entertaining as anything. And I just want to say, because I forgot to bring it up, the other one, if you want Alex Pereira to come up to heavyweight, Ciryl Gane's the fight to beat for him at heavyweight.
Yeah.
Just because you know he's not going to go after him on the ground.
Yeah.
And then real quick, I will say I do think Kennedy's looked better at heavyweight too. I think it suits him a little bit because he's still a little bit more talented than some of those bad heavyweights. So I think it suits him a little bit more.
I agree. A lot quicker too.
Yeah.
Vicente Luque went out there and sorry, were you not done, Jerry?
Quick shout for a fight for Kennedy. Waldo Cortez Acosta.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
That's one of my other favorite heavyweights. There's not many I like, and he's one I actually like.
These 2 guys fighting would be a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah. They're booking your boys against each other, but it's a fun fight. All right. Shout out to Vicente Luque for going out there. The Dark Knight rose, but unfortunately it was not Tony Ferguson. It was Vicente Luque. Was more of an anaconda, but that's takes the fun out of it. I will shout out Evloev and Sterling. More of a fun fight than a lot of people were expecting. A lot of good grappling exchanges. There was a tad bit of controversy on that one. I thought Evloev deserved to win. I think he was a lot more active in chasing finishes and trying to do damage, specifically ground and pound. I think especially in the third round, which was the swing round, Aljamain got deep in a double leg and then just sat there. And he was just trying to hold on and not finish the double leg, which I was screaming at my TV because I hate that when he does that. Finish the double leg. You have the double leg. Try and finish the double leg, please. Don't just sit there while he is up against the fence and try and manipulate this into a clinch position. You had the double leg. You did the hard part by getting your hands locked in the double leg. This is a small part about Aljamain's game that I absolutely hate, but like I said, it was a much better fight than a lot of people expected. Did have Evloev winning that one. And then Josh Van, shout out Josh Van. Every time he's on a prelim, he's one of my final thoughts. He went out there, looked good, beat the hell out of Cody Durden. Cody Durden was too tough for his own good, and it did not cash my Josh Van KO plus 225. Did everything but got the KO. Smoked him to the body, smoked him to the head, gave him about 12 concussions. KO? No, but I'll live. Last one I will shout out. Doo Ho Choi versus Nate Landwehr. This was a really impressive fight, in my opinion, because Nate Landwehr is great at just out cardioing people in the late rounds. Doo Ho Choi, however, did a sensational job of controlling the pace. I think I've learned to realize that that's one of the more underrated things is who can control the pace, especially when there's a cardio dynamic in a fight. And in this fight, Nate Landwehr had more gas in the tank, but Doo Ho Choi was the one who controlled the pace, ends up getting the finish in the third round. So I thought that was really impressive. And a lot of times when you get that guy who is in your face, cardio, outlast you when we both get tired, a lot of times those guys are tough to control the pace against. And Doo Ho Choi did that, and I've been impressed with him in his last couple fights.
Yeah, I want to say on that, I was impressed because I'm not like super keen on all of Nate Landwehr's fights, but I've seen him fight enough. And you know what makes a fight a lot easier to win when you make the other guy like completely lost for a whole round out there. Like Nate didn't get a single thing going for the whole first round. And that is what surprised me too. And that's almost against Nate and how he fights, at least to be a little a little pressure or get some sort of striking going. But no, I was super impressed of he just like neutralized him almost, and then looked good with his own striking throughout.
Yeah. Usually Landwehr gets hit, but he'll hit back. Like even if he's getting tagged up, he's gonna even if he's behind, he'll start behind and then catch up. But he wasn't even able to start behind. He didn't get off the starting block at all the whole entire fight, which is you don't see that often. And I don't know that's it's not like Landwehr didn't come to fight. He always comes to fight. So very impressive for Doo Ho.
Yeah, I mean, nice finish. Got him on the ground, some ground and pound to get it out of there. Yeah. I don't know if either of you mentioned it. I'm just going to mention otherwise. Bryce Mitchell, there's a reason he was minus 800 favorite, but just had to say something about that because then we've touched on every fight on this card.
Yeah. Also, I think that was a slam KO. A lot of people thought the elbows put him out, but I actually think the slam of Krohn
stunned him enough.
I think that started the KO process and then finished him off with the elbow. So.
What makes more sense, the slam KO or Bryce Mitchell actually having power in his hands? Maybe it is the slam KO.
Yeah, I think so.
You got us a point there.
All right, we've got a big welterweight main event this Saturday. Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. This one we talked about a little bit earlier. Like we're talking about how we're going to book guys like Ian Garry moving forward. In this fight, we talked about for briefly because it does matter who wins this fight. And Buckley, I think he's 5-0 since moving down to welterweight. Covington has been an elite guy for a long time, or at least has been fighting number one ranked guys or a title fight or something of that matter for a long time. And now he's fighting, down in the rankings, giving a guy like Buckley a chance, which I didn't expect to see this be the fight. I thought we were going to see Usman against a bigger name, Covington against a bigger name. Ends up being Buckley. So a little bit of surprise there, but I do think this is a good fight. What do you guys make of the UFC Tampa main event? Jerry, it's your turn to lead us off.
Well, I just found out Colby Covington does have a win against a current active UFC fighter. I for some reason thought he had no wins against current active UFC fighters, but Max Griffin's still around. So that
And
was
he
his
just
last.
lost to Michael Chiesa, so I don't know how active that is.
Yeah.
Exactly. Rest my case there. This is one of the ones that, like, Colby talks the talk. He does not back it up, or at least has not recently, against anyone that's worth anything. Well, Joaquin Buckley has been looking really good. I think he's 5-0 or 6-0 since going back to the welterweight division. Looks like he completely refound himself as a fighter, and I think this should be an entertaining fight. Colby isn't in really that boring of fights unless his dance partner is pretty boring, like Leon Edwards was, for example.
Or unless they can't grapple and he can just go out there and
That's what I was going to
not
say.
do
Yeah.
shit from top.
Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
Jorge.
Yeah, I guess he did do that with Jorge. Jorge, the whole thing I remember from the Jorge fight was them just yelling at each other every time they went back to the corner. And
they didn't do much fighting in between.
Yeah, so they had more food there.
He was retired. He was a foot out the door.
Yeah. And the crazy part is they're talking about him coming back like he didn't fight 2 fights with his foot out the door.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that, like, we're talking about these fights for Colby Covington, yet he's still here. He's still ranked 6th. He's still fighting a top 10 guy. And if he wins this, like we were saying earlier, there's a possibility of him fighting someone up the rankings or fighting a guy Ian Garry, who's looking like he was a win away from getting a title last weekend. So he's still very relevant, and I think that's fair play to his personality and how he acts. This fight, though, I just see Buckley kind of, if he can avoid the takedown, I see him just piecing him up.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's because this is his first fight of 2024. So I imagine maybe that's a reason why he took it, because then that would be over a year off and stuff like that. I think, but it is. What was he ranked against? Sorry, real quick.
I think it's 6 versus 9.
6 versus 9.
Okay, so he's down to 6, but yeah, so still 6 though. So, overall, yeah, I think it's a good little fight. I know people, and even me myself, seeing Covington, even though he had a couple of bad outings, seeing him back in there just to see, because when he is firing on all cylinders, like in some of those Usman fights, I mean, he is elite. I just don't know if he quite has that anymore. And then this is a good name for Buckley, who's, like you said, and I was just checking, 5-0 in this new weight class, but he's looked good in all of them. So this is another chance to prove that. And then I already saw some stuff at the presser and speaking to media. So I will say Covington's whole thing, his way of selling fights, he has a boost right now. This is his best chance to do it based off what just happened with the election and stuff. So, he because before that, people are like, oh, he's so great at selling fights. And it's like, is he really that good? I don't know. But I think his level of selling fights, weirdly enough, ties into what's happening in politics, which is crazy thing to say. I don't think that happens too often with any other person. But we'll see in this fight. I mean, what a way to come back after a year off and get a win against Buckley. I mean, I think Covington would be sitting pretty, being able to call some shots for his next fight.
Yeah. But, Colby thinks if he wins, he's going to fight for the title. So said that at Media Day. Colby also said a lot of crazy things at Media Day.
That's the head trauma.
He actually didn't. Yeah. He also didn't talk about Buckley much at Media Day. He was talking about LeBron and
talked about
like,
LeBron
how many
again.
Yeah, again. He wants to know how many Diddy parties LeBron has been at, and that's I stay out of that business. Talked about John Jones. Talked about a lot of things. Like I said, not a lot of Joaquin Buckley. I'll try and keep this short, but I don't really want to go on this rant, but yeah. Overall, I think this is a really bad fight for Colby, because I think that when you look at Colby and when he was best, at his best, it's against guys who were facing deficiencies in the grappling, significant deficiencies that he could exploit. I think the best fights in his career were the 2 Usman fights. I think those were really, really close fights. A lot of people like to remember those as, oh, Colby got his jaw broke, which, he did, but that kind of discredits what happened in the 4 rounds before that were very, very close and competitive. And I don't like Colby at all. So I'm not just trying to be a fanboy and say, oh, he almost went out there and beat him. Those were really competitive rounds against Usman's. And over the course of 9 rounds that went to decision. He took a lot of rounds off Usman when not a lot of other guys did. Leon got 1 in the first, in the rematch, and then I think he got 3 or 4 in the second one. So like Leon's really the only other guy to do it outside of Colby. But point being, Usman is, the grappling kind of cancels out, and it becomes a striking match between two guys who aren't really that great of strikers. And since then, we've seen Colby strike less, be less aggressive, and when he's less aggressive, then he can't use his value. And can't use his cardio. So if he can't be aggressive on the feet, and I don't think he can be aggressive on the feet here, because what's going to happen if he's aggressive with his hands? Like, is he going to hurt Buckley if he lands solid? Like, I don't think so. So I think that just if he approaches Buckley with hands, I think Buckley can just sit down on his own shots. So I don't think that's really a game plan. And then you have to go, can he wrestle Buckley? But Buckley used to fight at 185. Could you imagine Colby at 185? No. Like, Buckley had a winning record at 185 pounds. Colby has talked a lot about fighting guys not in his division. They've all been 55ers. Buckley has never once spoke about fighting a 55er and was doing business at 85. Now they meet at 70. And you've got Colby. He's been talking more about fighting Dustin and Charles than he has been fighting, the Buckleys of the world. And that's a concern for me, because when they start grappling, I think the physicality is going to be massive here. And Buckley can also grapple. It's not like he's a bum on the ground. Colby's probably a better grappler, but I think the gap in grappling is going to be made up for in the gap in physicality, which is huge. So I think physical strength, grappling defense, all favor Buckley, and everything on the feet favors Buckley. So as long as Buckley doesn't death gas by the end of round 3, I think he wins this fight, and he's probably going to land a shot. It'll probably be, like a weave, and then wham, here's like a big hook, and he knocks him out. So I think he knocks him out with a hook eventually, after Colby just doesn't have success with the grappling, and then he's standing there staring at him, and Buckley goes, okay, I'll throw. Like, Buckley isn't going to do what Leon did and stare at him for long periods of time. Buckley's going to get in his face and try and knock him out, and I think he will. So I like Buckley a lot here. I put him in a parlay with Evloev and Petr Yan a couple weeks ago. He was minus 185 then. He's like minus 300 now. So I think it's pretty. Point being, I like Buckley a lot, to the point where several weeks ago I was like, oh, I'll bet him now. So I think Buckley's going to win this one. I'll probably end up betting him by knockout too before the weekends.
Likewise, I want to also put out there, like, he's been winning by knockout this year. This would be his 4th fight this year, which that's good play in itself, because his first fight was March 30th. So he had 1 day left in that month. Then it was May, October, and now once again. And he's already been sending some tough ranked guys towards the door. Beat Vicente Luque with a TKO. Knocked out Wonder Boy. So they're 2 older guys. The other fight he had, Nursultan Ruziboyev.
Yeah. Can I just say on Ruziboyev? Ruziboyev is absolutely massive. If you put Ruziboyev and Covington against each other, like, the size difference would be insane. And he out-grappled Ruziboyev, even though he's bigger than him. So.
Yep. So there's another one. That's the one I couldn't remember that fight, but now that you said, it was the big dude in St. Louis.
Yep.
Because he just wanted to fight on his hometown card. And he said, "I'll anywhere." And that's right. So beat that guy as well. He was much bigger than Colby. Now he gets to fight the 36-year-old on short notice coming in. Hammer is one.
And then the last thing, kind of just to pick up both things. One, I think one of the reasons he's had some success at welterweight is that wrestling has looked really good over this last couple of fights. So obviously, if he can neutralize that against Colby, that should pay dividends. And then I was trying to check real quick, though. The one thing is, I don't think has Covington been finished by KO or TKO in the UFC. I was checking real quick, and I wasn't really seeing. Well, sorry, except he got. I thought it was an early stoppage in that first Usman fight. That one technically was. So I don't think he was out, and I think he was still very coherently, strategically defending himself too. But he
got submitted by Warley Alves back in 2015. But
okay, that was just it.
Right, so
that would be the other thing. As much as people have their problems with Colby, and you wouldn't even really think of him having like a super strong chin necessarily either, but has not been finished. So that would be something, even though he's a little older now. If Buckley could get that done too and get him out of there with a finish, that would really say something too.
Yeah, based on, I also agree that the Usman fight was an early stoppage. I think he was trying to work up on a single. I think that fight was stopped at a moment where Colby was trying to advance position, which I think when you're trying to advance position, that shows a form of intelligent defense, even if he was hurt, even if his jaw was broken. And I will say, as far as being a superstar goes, the way that people reacted to that fight being stopped via ground and pound, could you imagine if he flatlined Colby? That's like the number one person that like so many fans want to see get flatlined, and understandably so. Like I can't argue with you at all. For if you're like, I want to see Colby dead, and they're like, and not dead, but like out cold. I know people who say that as being out badly. But if he
Yeah.
puts Colby out badly, like that's like number one on a lot of people's I want to see them go out cold list. So I think it would add a decent amount of fans just by doing that.
That is true. Because we went for both of them. Funny enough that two of the most popular people loved and hated both of them. But when Monzo got put out cold too, there was a bunch of people that were excited to finally see that. So I think Covington same way. Even though they both have their fans, they both obviously have a lot of haters too. So that would definitely get Buckley some fans.
Yep. All right, let's wrap this up with some final thoughts on UFC Tampa. Not a bad fight night card. It did lose some fights. Some fights got pushed to quarter one of 25. I think we had a couple pullouts that ended up being replaced with fights that you go, oh, well, that's not nearly as fun. So it did lose a decent bit of quality in the last couple weeks, but I think it's still an above average fight night card as far as taking things on the road goes. So, Jerry, if you want to lead us off on this one, do you have any final thoughts on the card?
I mean, I'm not going to dive into depth on this first one because maybe one of y'all will talk about it. But Manel Cott, Bruno Silva should be entertaining, just one way or another. Two ranked guys going at it. The other two fighters specifically that I'm interested in, Sean Woodson always seems to put on an entertaining show one way or another. Might not be getting finishes, but his fights seem to have some high flying action because he always goes against stand up guys. And then Joel Alvarez, since he's come into the UFC, only one of his 8 fights has gone the distance. Everything else, he's either won 6 of or lost once by submission TKO. So he always has a finish coming on, and I'm hoping for another one this weekend in Tampa.
I agree because obviously Sean Woodson, I'd say, is the A side, but Fernando Padilla is not bad too. I think that's a fun fight. You took Joel Alvarez was going to be my pick, and Joe Close has some wins of his own too. I do think Alvarez is better. So my guy Michael Johnson still kicking. No one's calling for retirement yet. Now he's just an old guy that probably won't win, but he still has some stuff in him. And then I guess the last one I'll pick. I kind of talked about it before we started, but Adrian Yanez back in here. Got back in the win column in his last one, but had this stumble against I think it was Rob Font and who did I say? Jonathan Martinez. Yeah. So he's back in there, but James did say the dude he's fighting is a heavy favorite, so that may be a little bit concerning. I don't know if I really know Daniel Marcos. And then before I get up to you, I do want to say we talked about cancellations. I just reacquainted myself that we lost Tracy Cortez McKenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas on one card. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Something to say.
Yeah. Jerry bought tickets and he asked for a refund and everybody pulled out.
Yeah.
Just for that. I know. I will still be there, even if the whole card is changed. No Ian Garry. There's no Dern and Ribas. It'll still be fun.
Yeah. All right. So I've got a couple here. Manel Cott, Bruno Silva. Won't go in detail on that. But I do think that's a really fun fight. I think they're both really good strikers. I'm interested to see how that plays out. Cub Swanson, Billy Quarantillo, two veterans. Think it's going to be a fun fight. Don't know how much either of them have left, to be honest. Part of that intrigue is going to see how much they have left. If they have anything left, it's going to be a good fight. Vitor Petrino, Dustin Jacoby. Man, I liked Vitor Petrino, and man, he did not pass the Anthony Smith test. So
Yeah.
I don't know where that leaves us now, but here he is fighting Dustin Jacoby. I'll have more rooting interest in that one than probably a lot of other people. To add on to the Marcos point, Marcos 16-0. A lot of respect. A lot of people think he lost his last fight to David Grant. I think that was his last fight, or maybe that was the fight before. As far as scary undefeated prospects go, he is undefeated, but he's not like, oh my God, this guy's undefeated. He's great. A little bit more concerned for undefeated prospects. I will shout out Navajo Sterling and Tokos for those who are not aware. I'm not overly pumped about the Navajo Sterling UFC run, but got a nice knockout on Contenders. He trains with Israel Adesanya, so a lot of people are really pumped for his debut. I think he's a tad bit on the overrated side just because he trains with Izzy. I think if you put him in any other gym and gave him the same exact name and results, probably not as hyped, but should be noted because a lot of people will probably be interested in that. A lot of good fights on this card, actually. Michael Johnson, Atman Zaitar. Atman Zaitar sucks. We're getting a Michael Johnson KO. Book it.
Let's go.
Joel Alvarez, thought he looked really good in his last fight, fighting Drakkar Klose, who has the state of Michigan tattooed on his chest. And for anyone who doesn't know, I am from Michigan, if you can't tell. So I don't know what I'm going to think about that one. And I will wrap it up with Miles Johns and Felipe Lima. Felipe Lima impressed me in his UFC debut, and I'd like to see him beat Miles Johns. Those are my final thoughts. Try to keep it quick, but there's a lot there, so it's kind of more of a quick wrap-up of the card.
I think we did a great job. There are a lot of entertaining fights on here worth watching.
Yeah, I think it's a solid fight night card, even if it's not massive and some of the fights got pulled. A lot of those fights, for example, Michael Johnson, a prelim, is better than a lot of those prelims can be. Felipe Lima, prelim, better than a lot of them. Joel Alvarez, a lot of guys worth watching who are prelims, better than this guy's 1-2 and is going to get cut when he loses this fight. I don't think we have as many of those.
Good way to wrap up a very entertaining 2024 in the UFC.
Yep. And off the back of that, this is obviously the last card of the year. We will figure out a way to get some podcasts out. Probably won't do every single week. I don't think we haven't even talked about this, so I'm just riffing. Yeah. So this is subject to change. But we probably won't do every single week, especially around the holidays. But we won't leave things sitting until the next card, which is
like January 11th or something, or even after that.
Yeah, I think it's 11th.
Or 11th.
That gives us like 3 weeks, so we'll try and have one or two before to bridge over the gap. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. But like I said, that do not have that ironed out on the recording schedule. So with the holidays, that is subject to change. And we'll try and maybe we'll add some spice to those episodes because those are a little bit different than your standard week to week. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you for tuning in. And if you want more UFC content, you can go to vendettasportsmedia.com. I'll have the written preview for UFC Tampa up and also best bets for UFC Tampa as well. So those will be on the website if you want more UFC Tampa content. And thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe and make sure you are back for whenever we are back next. So just subscribe to the YouTube and you'll see the recording pop up when it goes live. So thank you for tuning in. See you later.